He'll make it for sure. Now that's why I backed him on Tap Touch.
Hey, Luke.
Yes, Gene Simmons?
He's probably the best when it comes to this stuff.
Thanks, Gene.
You've got the touch. You got the touch. You got the power. Got the touch? Choose Tap Touch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Hello and welcome to Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle. And I don't mean to sound redundant, Cody, but every single week it feels like we have more to talk about. And we got through one game of round 10 in the NBL and we almost had enough to talk about for a full show. So this is a lot to get through from the world of the NBL. There was a crazy week in Adelaide to talk about, and I'm fascinated to get your thoughts on who the new head coach is, because he's a man very familiar to us here on the show. We've got a wild night in Cairns to talk about, and might be getting even crazier in Cairns now that they've got a tropical cyclone to deal with this week as well. Dramatic week at the South East Melbourne Phoenix. I'm not sure we expected things to get so dramatic there, but it's been a hectic week for them. We saw the Illawarra Hawks knock off the Perth Wildcats. Melbourne United, we expected a bounce back, and that was as emphatic a bounce back as you'll see. Tasmania Jack Jumpers kept on impressing. We'll get through it all on this week's show. We're here thanks to Hoop 7 and Tab Touch as always. I'm Chris Pike, but great to have you back, Cody. And boy, this is going to be a lot to break down.
Yeah, there's a lot going on this round, and you're right. I think we could probably just make a snippet of this intro and just play it every week, and it'd probably be fairly set in stone for the whole season, because there's lots going on, and big weekend of basketball, which was a lot of fun all round.
A week like that, I mean, we'll break things down one by one, but when you get what we saw in Cairns, then you have Adelaide sacking their coach and bringing in Scott Ninnis. South East Melbourne Phoenix sack and import, and they've already now signed a replacement. Gee, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, well, there's lots going on, and it's kind of that year where teams need to make that last second change if they think they need to really make a push later in the season, because really any later and it's probably too late in the season. So the fact that all this happened within a few days of each other is pretty crazy, but that's the NBL for you.
Yes, it is. All right, let's get stuck into it one by one. Let's start with what we saw. Almost feels like a lifetime ago now, but it was last Thursday night in Cairns. It was always going to be a fascinating game. The Taipans and the Sydney Kings always play fascinating games, but I don't know if anyone's seen anything like what we saw. We've seen some delays to games before. We saw a game, I think it was the Breakers and the Hawks in Wollongong, that had to be called off because of the leaking roof that Julian O'Brien poked the holes in. But I don't know if we've seen anything like this. So at halftime up at the Cairns Convention Centre, the power went out, and it never really fully returned. You've played up in that building. Before we get to the shot clock situation, Cody, I spent a couple of weeks in Cairns going back a few years, and as soon as you step outside, the humidity kills you. In that building, even with the aircon on, it can be a sweaty building. Of all places in the world to play without aircon, Cairns has to be right at the bottom of the list. Yeah,
it certainly is, because it's hot in general, and the humidity sucks, and the floor's usually a lot more slippery than normal, and without aircon is pretty wild. So. But they did well. They did very well to get through it and to deal with it. And I think it came on late in the fourth quarter, which was probably too late to make an impact. But I don't envy those guys playing in those conditions, because that would have been a night.
So a couple of things to break down. Before I get to the shot clock, the halftime break, so it ended up being, I think it was 51 minutes in the end. When you have that long of a break, you pretty much have to do your full warm-up all over again. Would have you understood if they felt that was too long of a break to restart the game, or did they make the right decision to play on?
Yeah, it's a tough one. And, pardon the pun here, but I actually watched this game on delay. So when I turned it on and saw the game was 3.5 hours long, I was like, oh boy, what's going on here? And then, obviously got to half time, and I fast forward and kept fast forwarding, and I just felt like I was getting the same shots on replay. But yeah, look, 51 minutes is a long time. It's a long time, especially after playing a half of basketball. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like the 10 or 15 minutes is too long. And after 50 minutes, that is a lot. You do risk injury after that. Yeah. The one advantage they did have was it was so humid. Yeah. So, you don't players didn't really cool down. Yes. Exactly. So that's probably why, one of the reasons why they didn't. If it was a cold, rainy, day in Tassie or in Melbourne or something like that, it might have been a bit different. But it was that is a long time. And look, shout out to the guys on the broadcast because they didn't really cut to a whole lot of commercials. They
had to kill some time.
No, those three, the back and forths and thinking of topics to talk about and Albus destroying us in the background.
Hell out of Albus. He's full of beans, our third co-host right now.
But yeah, look, they did an unbelievable job to keep the ball rolling and keep people engaged, I'm sure. And
they had to fill up enough time where we do a full episode. Yeah. They had to just fill that time at half time.
Of just talking about, thinking stuff off the top of their head and making a discussion about it. So, look, pretty impressive all round.
Thank you to Albus for that little interruption. Now... Okay, so the halftime break. Yep. The Sydney Kings were leading the game. They were in control of the game. If you're the Kings, would have you considered not playing out the second half and being asked to be awarded the victory?
Yeah, it really is a tough one. I mean, it's a situation that we haven't really seen for quite some time, if ever, really. And yes and no. There's been a bit of that in the past with the old COVID year and the Cats being awarded a championship after not fully finishing out the series and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's a bit of a touchy subject for the league in general. Yeah, I'm not sure what the best course of action would have been. I do think the fact that they were able to finish the game out was good. We'll obviously talk about the second half in a bit, but it's a tough one to say, well, no, we don't want to play after 50 minutes because we're up. Because if we're on the other side, we'd want to play. Sure. So it's a tough one. But look, I think the fact that they were able to get it up and running enough to be able to finish the second half was good.
During that break, the commentators talked about the options for the shot clock throughout the second half. So they threw up some different ideas and putting the shot clock up on the scoreboard and having the MC yelling out a countdown, or there's a lot of options they could have gone down. Even having the courtside commentator say when it gets to 10 seconds or counting down from 10. Yeah. You could have someone courtside holding up the numbers. Yeah. I mean, surely there were some options. What's the worst possible solution to play with absolutely no shot clock at all and no mention of it?
Yeah.
What did you make of it?
Yeah, I don't know. It really. Again, it's just another tough decision that they had to make, and look, I guess the whole agreeing to just play normally without the shot clock going on was an idea. I'm not going to say it was a good or a bad one. It was an idea.
Yeah.
But we kind of saw it, bite them a little bit late in the game, end of the third and in the fourth. Yeah. But yeah, look, I'm sure there was a way that they could have figured it out. Not obviously ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but I think they needed something. I think they needed something in there because...
Well, as a player, if the MC says over his microphone, there's 10 seconds to go, do you pick that up while you're out on the court playing? Would you notice?
You would, if you knew that was going to happen, right? Usually, you can hear it, but you don't pay any mind to it. Yeah. But if you knew that, okay, this is our shot clock, this is the only way we can do it, you'd pay mind to it. You'd definitely listen to it. So, yeah, look, I think there was something they could have done, but didn't end ideally.
Do you feel like it impacted the game in the end? Because there are absolutely a few possessions where Jalen Adams, I haven't put the shot clock to it, but he at least took up 30 seconds of the shot clock. So there was some... Adam Ford said afterwards 45, but I don't think it quite got to that point.
I think it was close. There
was a couple late. Yeah. So what impact did it have in the end?
Oh, it did. It had a huge impact. And the fact that Cairns made a heck of a run back at the reigning champs. And really, if there was a shot clock, I do think that the game would have ended differently.
Yeah.
But it was a tough one, and I remember talking to Lauren about it, and it's one of those odd little conundrums of I totally understand what Jalen Adams is doing. Like it's gamesmanship, right? You're trying to win a game.
Yeah.
You use all the elements, that you can to win the game.
I also can't imagine he did that without guidance from his coach. Surely he's been given some instruction.
Oh, you'd think so, And look, Adams is a smart player.
Yes.
Obviously being a point guard, you've got to be one of the smarter players on the floor anyway. But he understood time, score, what wasn't there that could affect him.
Yeah.
And end of the third, he ran it down a chunk, and then end of the fourth, he just kind of held it until they fouled him, and then sending him to the line, it's automatic 2 points basically.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you're on the Cairns end, then that's brutal. To lose a game in that way, and it's something that they probably feel like they probably should have won that.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, they would feel like that, but at the same time, they're in that situation because it's their building. So it's hard for them to really say much.
Oh, it is, and it's a frustrating thing, and there's got to be something in place if this kind of thing happens. For all stadiums, it can happen to anywhere. It's just one of those things that sometimes it's out of your control, but you've got to have a backup plan. And I think
surely you even have like a plug-in clock of some sort. You can see those light-up clocks everywhere.
Yeah.
Surely, maybe from now on, you just tell every building you need to have a backup.
Well, I think this has probably kicked the NBL into gear to have a backup plan for each stadium now. I'd like to think it has anyway.
Yes.
Again, this is a one-off in however long it's been since we've seen stadiums power shut off for a few minutes, but nothing like this. Yeah, look, I'm sure they're putting in place some sort of backup plan for stadiums, and hopefully if this ever happens again, which I hope it doesn't, that it's not an hour between game time and not having a shot clock and all that, because it's going to be one of those asterisk games, which is frustrating for both teams, I'm sure.
The old Challenge Stadium was famous for shot clock problems.
Yep.
That was there was almost not a game that went by that didn't have a problem. Last thing on this, Jonah Antonio, he knows his times. He is a master at getting off clocks, shots at the buzzer. Do you feel like if the shot clock was up on the screen, he would have got his shot off in time at the end? Because I guess he was told that there's 1.5 seconds to go, get your shot off quickly, but he didn't know the exact time, and he didn't know until the backboard lit up red that he got it off late. Do you feel like with a shot clock he would have got it off in time?
I'm not really sure, and it's kind of hard to really speculate on that kind of thing because of how the play went. He kind of ducked under the defender to get his last dribble off and get his feet planted and let it fly.
Yep.
And if there was anyone that was going to get their shot off in time, it was going to be Jonah. So, I mean, they went to the right guy. As soon as he made it, I called it because I did have Lauren was around the house, and I had this feeling that something crazy was going to happen. So I had her in there for the last minute and a half of the game.
Yep.
Something weird's going to happen here. It's just been that kind of a game.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he hit it, I said he didn't get off. You could tell pretty much straight away.
Yeah.
It was close. It was a lot closer than I actually thought when it went to slow-mo.
It only didn't look close in slow-mo.
Yeah.
But when watching it in real time, it was real close.
It was close. So, would he have got that shot off? Maybe, but he wouldn't have got the same shot off. It would have been a kind of a hip sling or, off 1 foot or something like that. So it wouldn't have been the same shot. And, would that have gone in? Who knows? But yeah, look, I think Cairns had their opportunities, but it was kind of their fault for being down.
Is there anything more awkward than watching the team celebrate a shot like that at the end when we know watching that
didn't count?
It's not going to count. You're going to be disappointed. It was so awkward to watch.
It is awkward, but, that kind of a thing happens and you're going to celebrate it anyway. It's probably pretty hard to really know if he got it off in time while being down there on the floor because you're watching him, you're not watching the shot. And obviously with no clocks, you're not watching any of the clocks. You're watching him make the shot. So, yeah, it's tough. It is tough, and to see them going crazy, which is a lot of fun to see.
Yeah.
And then have the refs call it off, and then just the distraught faces after that and the disbelief. It really sucks. It's not ideal, but it's whole array of emotions in about 3 seconds.
Have you been in that situation before? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in situations where we get game winners and shots to tie the game on the buzzer. I've been to actually this past season, this past NBL1 season, 2 of the women's games at home. Shots were made basically at the buzzer to tie or win the game, and both of them were called off, which is pretty crazy. I mean, the one I remember was I remember both of them. I think it was like the first home game, and one of the girls made a ridiculous shot to, I think it might have been to win it, and the refs called it off. And that's without having to go to replays or anything like that. But it's the utter disappointment after you see the refs, wave it off is just brutal.
All right, let's go to Adelaide.
Yep.
Cody. This time last week, we were finding out that CJ Bruton had been sacked and Scott Ninnis was taking over. Before we break it down in a bit more detail, what was your reaction?
Not overly surprised. I think CJ probably saw it coming as well. I think he kind of lost the group a bit, and I mean, they just haven't been performing. I mean, there was no real consistency within the group and what they were doing on the floor, and even rotations. There was no real consistency in who they'd go to and what they were playing. Defensively, they didn't really have any bite or anything like that. So, look, obviously a tough situation, and this is kind of CJ's team that he put together. So this was kind of his chance to prove that I can do what I can be successful with my team. And it just didn't happen this year for him, unfortunately. And not overly surprised that we saw Adelaide move him on.
Before we get to Scott, CJ got 2.5 seasons. Yep. His first season was rushed, where he didn't get to pick his team because of what happened with Connor Henry. But then I feel like the last season and a half, he has had a chance to build the team he wanted. Do you feel like he got a good enough crack at it?
Yeah, I think so. I think last year we saw a star-studded team that well underachieved. These guys
we picked them for the championship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, you look on paper and they should have been championship caliber. But whether it was not getting guys in right situations or not having them buy into defensive schemes or offensive schemes or things like that, it obviously didn't work out for them. And then it's been the same this year. Obviously, very different team than what they had last year in terms of what they've got on paper. But look, I think the 2.5 years is a good chunk of time, and especially for a city like Adelaide, who is a very smart basketball city. The fans are a very smart, bunch, and they understand the game, and they expect to be contenders. If it's not working out, I think 2.5 seasons is probably about as good a shot as you're going to get.
You've got a bit of history with the Bruton family. You played with his brother at the Senators, Austin. Your dad has a great history with Cal. Do you have much of a history with CJ at all?
Not really. Not really. A little bit. Like we've spoken a few times, but haven't really had a whole lot to do with each other. I mean, Austin, one of my best mates, and love him to death. Obviously it's frustrating, but we saw Cal put up a post thanking Adelaide, and which I thought was really good. And they gave him his first shot at a head coaching gig, so you can only be thankful. And I mean, there's not a whole lot that they can really be upset about, I guess, because it just didn't work out for them. It is what it is. That happens. Maybe in a different market it'll work out for him, but it just didn't work out in Adelaide.
Let's get to Scott Ninnis, who's now taken over. It's a remarkable story. So I still remember dealing with Scott. The first time I really met him was when he was a head coach last time. So that's how much our history goes back. And in between the years, we stayed in touch occasionally. And then he kind of wanted to get back involved a little bit. So we started up the Sixers Fix podcast that we did for a little while. So I got to know him there. But at that time, the last thing he could have imagined was being a coach again. Yeah. He hadn't coached at all since he was sacked the last time in 2010. So he hadn't even coached at state league level. So he basically had no involvement at the club at all. Then he got back involved with the podcast. He started doing some community clinics and camps with the 36ers. Then he got back coaching at South Adelaide, won a championship. And then he's been an assistant coach this year to CJ. It's a remarkable thing because 4 years ago, coaching was completely out of his blood. Now to hear him talk, he genuinely wants this to be an audition for him to remain the head coach beyond this season. It's a remarkable story.
Yeah, no, it's very impressive, and it's a fair bit of history there, and it's a little bit of common knowledge amongst the basketball community, really, and then hearing guys like Damon Lowry being like, "Oh, he's never coached," and all this sort of stuff. You're like, mate, a little bit of homework, please. So no, I just thought I'd bring that up. Sorry,
No.
But
he wasn't even a bad coach last time. He took one of his seasons they went to the playoffs.
Yeah. So look, I think it's good. It's awesome that he's back into the fold, and he's really eager to stay there. It's tough if we kind of saw it with Brisbane a bit when Vanderjack took over, and he didn't really want the job, but he was kind of his hand was a bit forced, and hopefully Scotty can...
He was given the job when he was on a plane.
Yes, he was. Yeah, exactly. Hopefully Scott can kind of right the ship a bit this season and get the boys all on the same page at least. And then look, it'd be interesting to see what the club does going forward. But I think they could certainly do worse than Scotty.
Now, unfortunately, you are the absolute right person to have this conversation with. So from what we hear, I won't break any confidentiality with what Scott might have told me personally, but from what we hear publicly, the owner, Grant Kelly, and the CEO, Nick Barbado, have sort of laid down the law a little bit about what players they want playing and who they don't want playing. So against Cairns on Saturday night, we didn't see Sunday Dech and Jason Cadee at all, and from what we hear, that's been a mandate to not play those guys. We also didn't see Mitch McCarron, the captain, in the starting lineup because the experiment as Trenton Flowers as point guard is all of a sudden back as a reality. Yeah, I mean, we don't need to go over your history. If anyone wants to hear your story, go back to one of our early episodes about what happened at the Hawks. But you've lived this as a senior player. How tough is it for especially Sunday and Jason to be going through this?
Yeah, it's tough. And, especially as two veteran guys and two guys that I think can make an impact within this team. It's brutal. I mean, you hire coaches to do this job. I understand that, like, ownership, they're the ones putting the money in and all that sort of stuff, but, you hire people for a reason. Don't try and micromanage. That's where you get failed seasons, because you're trying to micromanage someone that you've hired to do a job, and then you're basically telling them how to do their job. Don't do that. Let the coach. Let him play who he thinks is going to be successful. Let him experiment with putting these guys in different situations where he thinks they're going to be successful. Maybe it didn't work out in CJ's system, but Scott putting his system in, maybe it'll work out for him. It's I really hate seeing this kind of thing, and it's super frustrating when it's kind of out of coach's hands. Really, it's not ideal. So feeling for Jason for Sunday, and obviously Macca as well, who we saw have his little blow up at the team, and which I loved. I didn't like that it became public. I hate that because I feel like it's a bit of a sanctuary on the basketball court, especially the training court, and especially within a group that is going through what they're going through and not being as successful as they kind of would have liked, and then new coaches coming in, all that sort of stuff. It's kind of like a private little area, and I wasn't a fan of that leaked. Loved what he did, and loved the sentiment of it all, and reading some of the comments just proving people do not understand basketball, and saying, Mitch isn't playing well, why was he saying that? Well, that's why you're sitting there behind the keyboard. Yes, that's a whole other story. Sorry, rant over.
It's also why reading the comments is the worst possible.
So stupid.
Worst possible thing to do.
I don't know why I do it. I must have been very bored. But rant over, and look, it's frustrating. It sucks to see, and hopefully the young boys can step up and start playing well.
Last comment on this from me. I'll get your thoughts. Trenton Flowers is not a point guard in this league. He can't play as a point guard. He doesn't have the experience or the ability to be a point guard in this league. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I don't think so. I think it was tested out early and failed miserably, right? And it's frustrating for Trenton as a player as well, because now you're not putting him in situations where he can be successful.
We saw how good he could be off the ball with other guys creating for him.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he's about 6'8", and he's pretty tall. So I don't think he's going to really play that point guard moving forward in the rest of his career. And
and even if he does it in the NBA, you don't come up against the same pressure. You're allowed to bring the ball up and run things. You don't get that luxury in the NBL.
Well, that's it. So I don't know. It's frustrating, and like I said, it's got to be frustrating for him too, because he's not being put in positions for him to be successful, him to showcase what he can do. So look, the whole situation's very odd, but look, I'm hoping Scott can right the ship a bit and get these guys playing well and hard.
All right, Cody, let's take a deep breath. That's been a big first segment. When we come back, there's still a lot more for us to break down.
Yes, there is.
He'll make it for sure. That's why I backed him on Tap Touch.
You got the touch. You got the power. Got the touch? Choose Tap Touch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Imagine what you could be buying instead.
Okay, Cody, we've had a deep breath, and Elvis has even conked out. So Elvis is taking a break as well. That was a lot to get through just from Cairns and Adelaide, really. So let's get the other big discussion is the South East Melbourne Phoenix. I don't think we saw this coming, except that on last week's show, Simon knew something was in the works because he talked about how he felt like the Phoenix needed to replace Craig Moller with somebody significant. He didn't mention Will Cummings by name, but if you read between the lines of what he was saying, he felt like an import change was probably not too far away. First of all, what was your reaction when they did release Will Cummings?
Pretty surprised. I think he's been decent for them. But I mean, look, with Tarangi being out and now Mola being out for the season, they've kind of got a bit of a void in that area, which Cummings doesn't really fill for them, unfortunately. So look, I was a bit shocked, but again, like I said, it's that time of year where teams need to make a decision now on roster or coaching staff, as we've seen.
Sure.
But mainly rosters. If they really think they're going to push for a championship, they need to find the right pieces now.
It feels like they did need to make that decision roster-wise because they had to replace Craig Moller and it wasn't the right fit. But it also feels like there was more to it in terms of Will not necessarily buying into the club off the court. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that he didn't want to do the community work and the promo visits and all of that sort of thing. Is that surprising from your point of view to hear that Mike Kelly says that he basically made the decision for them because he wasn't doing what we expect?
Yeah, and look, it's tough. And, he said not doing what they expect, in terms of the team and the club. And, that could be, like you mentioned, out in the community. It could be to promos. It could be, even in the gym before trainings or after trainings or, if they have team functions or things along those lines. There's lots of stuff that goes on outside of the court. That
even calling up members and saying thank you, all those sort of things.
Yeah, all those little things that you're expected to do. It's part of it. And mustn't have bought into that, or he just, wouldn't show up to things or things of that nature. So, look, you don't like to see it. It sucks, but, some imports come in and, where they've been before are not expected to do any of that sort of stuff. So they don't think that they should have to do it here either. But it's all part of it. So, look, not ideal, but I think the fact that Mike Kelly has said that it made it easy for them, I think is only a good thing for them.
Yeah. So when you look at it that way, they've lost Craig Moller and without Will Cummings. They've signed a new signing, which we'll get to shortly. But in the ideal world, having lost your combo guard and then also your 3 or 4 man who's your bits and pieces player and you're sort of your heart and soul in a lot of ways with Craig Moller.
Yep.
What sort of player would have you been looking to replace those two guys with in one person?
Yeah, you'd kind of... It's tough because you'd kind of want a bit of a role player. You'd want someone similar to both of those two, and they do things very similar. Moller and Tarangi. They're those hard nosed kind of dive on the floor, do the dirty work. Crash the boards, get their hand on the board, and kind of those glue guys, I guess, is what you'd lump them into, and that's kind of who I think they would have gone out and gotten. Because look, that's the void that they're missing right now. Get rid of Will Cummings, who was a bit of a scorer, and I think they've got enough firepower for sure.
I think Ben Eyre can step into his role, can he, and play some more minutes.
He certainly can, and he's been awesome this year. Yeah. I think he's been great for them, so I think he can certainly fill that slot there. But look, I think that that kind of role player, glue guy, do the dirty work is someone who I thought they would recruit.
I'm not sure that who they signed fits that bill. I don't know a whole lot about him. I mean, he's played 224 NBA games, but nothing really sticks out. So the man we're talking about is Abdel Nader. What do you know about him?
Not a whole lot, unfortunately, and obviously 224 NBA games. He's got experience, which is good. And look, I think that the Phoenix wouldn't just go and sign, just because he's an NBA guy. So they've obviously done their homework on him, and
to do it so quickly, they must have had this in the works. Already.
Absolutely, because it's only been a few days, really, less than a week since they got rid of Cummings. So it would have been in the works for sure. But yeah, look, it's going to be interesting to see how he fits in. I think that they had some options around. I mean, it would have been interesting to see if Cook was around.
Yeah.
Look, Cook probably has a bit of a sizable contract over in Europe somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's not surprising at all. DJ, I don't think really fits where they kind of needed. If they had kept DJ around at all.
It doesn't. The skill set you talked about before, it doesn't quite fit. Does it?
No, it doesn't. So, yeah, look, it's going to be interesting to see how he goes, and I'm pretty excited to see it because it's always good to have a guy with NBA games under his belt, especially 224. That's not just you're around for a season and you played 7 games. It's
and from memory, he was part of the Suns team that went to the finals.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be interesting to see how he fits in and how quickly he can fit in.
The good thing from a Phoenix point of view is that they went to Sydney and still won a game, despite being without Moller, without Tarangi, and being without Cummings as well. That was an impressive performance. I mean, Mitch Creek put the team on his back, but there was a lot to like about putting a tough week behind them and going up to Sydney and getting a win.
Oh, and that's a very big character game and character win for them, I think. And you hit the nail on the head. That's the fact that they could put all that happened in that week, behind them, where that is behind them, and just move forward and concentrate on the next thing that you can do, and that was go out and beat Sydney, and that was huge, and probably one of Mitch Creek's best games of the year so far, and Williams has been unbelievable for them this season. He's been so good just everywhere. He's been really, really tough, and those two guys were just, they just kind of tore them apart, really. It was, it was good. It was very impressive and a bit of a character-building game for them.
Let's stick with that game. Sydney Kings lost. They'd won a couple of days earlier in Cairns, but that was you can't read a lot into that. And they haven't been in great form of late. Record-wise, they're still going okay. They're 8-6, so they've still put themselves in a strong position, but they don't seem to have that defensive bite that they had the last couple of years. They actually seem easy to play against right now, which isn't a great thing. What do you make of the way the Kings are travelling? Yeah,
well, they've kind of started just playing zone, and that's kind of it. It's a bit confusing. It's almost like the coaching staff doesn't really have backup plans. Obviously going into games, you've got, all right, this is plan A. This is what we're going to do, but you've got to have plan B, C, D, E, if something doesn't work, right? And it seems like they're kind of going out there with, all right, this team's not great against the zone. We're going to zone them. Play zone, get torn apart. All right, we're not going to change anything. We'll just keep it as is. Yeah. And I don't know. It's a tough one. And you're right. They don't have that defensive bite that they've kind of had in the past. But again, new coach, new system. It's obviously very different. But I mean, after this loss, it was interesting to see lots of the Kings fans calling for, coach's head, which is not ideal. Not ideal.
No. Is that premature in your mind?
Look, I think so. Very much so. They're so talented still. I'm sure that they'll find their feet. But
they've also had very few games where they've had a full squad available.
Yep. Which again, not ideal. It's tough to work with that, and then adding pieces in and out and all that sort of fun stuff it's hard to get on a rhythm, into a rhythm, and I think they'll figure it out because they're too talented not to.
One team I can't figure out is the New Zealand Breakers. Every time we feel like they might be turning a corner and put in a good performance, they
do a 180.
They do a 180. I mean, they were really poor at home to the Tasmania Jack Jumpers. virtually not in that game from the start. And, some of these numbers, look at the rebounding numbers. They were out-rebounded 60-34. Tasmania had 25 offensive rebounds to 6. I'll play you a little piece from Anthony Lamb because I spoke to him. Well, I asked Modi about it post-game, and Anthony Lamb stepped up to talk about how they will fix it. But as Modi also said in response to that, talk's cheap. And actions are what matters. They actually have to fix this. I mean, what do you make of the Breakers? We know their injury troubles, but they still can play well when they're on song, but then they have a performance like this.
Yeah, they're just, I mean, too inconsistent is the thing right now. And, I mean, look, they've had a shocking season in terms of, travel schedule to start. Yeah. And we mention that every week, really. But even the players that they're now missing and losing guys for the season or most of the season as well. And it's just not been a good season for them so far after the success that they had last year. But, I mean, a lot of that comes down to just effort. And it just doesn't look like some guys even want to be out there. It's really interesting and it's really odd to see with a Modi coach team where it seems like the last couple of teams that he's had have really had buy-in to trying to outwork teams, and you're just not seeing that this year. And in terms of rebounding, obviously I haven't listened to it yet, but in terms of rebounding, it is that's all effort. Obviously, some skill comes into play, but a lot of it is effort and wanting to go and get the ball. So,
well, let's have a listen to what Anthony Lamb said, because I found this interesting that he was so emphatic in his response, and then I'll let you know what Modi said straight after.
The rebounding problem is going to get fixed. That's it. It's going to get fixed. That's all we need to talk about. It will be fixed. I promise you that. It's an Anthony Lamb guarantee.
That's what I need to do.
How do you make that happen?
Work, practice. You got to practice. You got to drill it. You got to work on it. Work on it like it's everything you want in your life. Work on it it's like you're trying to take somebody out to dinner and treat them nice. You work on your rebounding like you care about your kids. That's how you work on it. That's what we're going to do.
It sounds like it's something as a group you're frustrated about. When you look at the numbers of this, I mean, 60 rebounds for 34, 25 offensive rebounds for them. Is that the biggest thing for you as a fan over this game?
Yes, for sure. Clean that up. That cleans up most of their possessions. Most of their possessions died. We would get great stops if we clean up those rebounds.
So he's pretty emphatic in his response. Strange some of the tangents he went on as well. But
very strange.
What do you think of his reaction? Do you expect a response on the back of what he said?
Look, I think so. If there's one thing we have learned from Modi's teams is that they'll come out and try and fix that up. I think that'll be an emphasis all week for them, and I wouldn't want to be on the court this week with them because some of those rebounding drills will be absolute nightmares. But, in a game where they give up, 21 second chance points and lose by 17 in the end, it's pretty much the ball game right there. It's you clean that up, and then all of a sudden you're in striking distance. And then, to get out rebounded by 26 is huge. And, give up 25 boards to a Jack Jumpers team that's not that big.
They haven't been a good, generally, they haven't been a great rebounding team, especially before Magnay got back.
Yeah, and that's it. So, I mean, it's not ideal. But it is what it is. And look, I do think we will see a bit of a bounce back for them. But, it's just been such an inconsistent year for them, unfortunately.
It was funny. The next question I asked was to Modi about how, basically, hearing that from a player, do you like that, and do you expect a response? And he basically said, doesn't matter what he says, it matters what they go and do now.
Oh, and that's it. Talk is cheap, right? And that's all part of it. Yeah, it's all well and good to say, look, we're going to do this, and we're going to go and really work on our rebounding, and then come out next practice and give up board after board after board, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of sprints being handed out for that kind of thing this week on the track for them. So. Yeah, look, it's going to be interesting to see how they respond. And, actions always speak louder than words.
Sticking with that game, with the Jack Jumpers, it was a great performance by them.
Yep.
They were without Milton Doyle, who could be the MVP of the league. So to go down to Auckland and get that win was mighty impressive. They also did it virtually without Marcus Lee. I was fascinated by this, and I feel like Scott Roth is the only coach in the league that could get away with doing this with one of his star imports and still have that star import have full buy-in. Yeah. So Marcus played the first 2 minutes of the game and didn't have a good first 2 minutes and he didn't play again. Scott benched him for the rest of the game. Will Magnay came in and had a massive impact and was terrific. But I feel like Scott has a good enough relationship where Marcus will take that on the chin, know the things he did wrong and bounce back. almost any other coach with an import, they might lose him for the rest of the season.
Oh, for sure. And, that's all part of the relationships that you build with the players, and especially imports, and, Roth being an American obviously knows what it's like to come to a foreign country and deal with what you're going through and be away from friends and family. And so I'm sure that, he has some great relationships with his players. And, I mean, if you're not performing, then you can't play. You know what I mean? And especially as an import, and he's not had the best season. I think that he's been a little exposed in areas, and he can't keep out of foul trouble, and he's always he's getting those 2 or 3 little cheap fouls that really just hurt him. And it's unfortunate. If he can figure out how to stay on the floor, I think he'll be really impactful for them. I think if they can switch between him and Magne and kind of had that two-headed monster, in their inside for them, I think it'll be huge. But it's tough. He's really got to figure it out, and I think if anyone's going to get it out of him, I think it's going to be Scott Roth. So be interested to see how he goes this week.
Just to get your thoughts on the Perth Wildcats. So they were the hottest team in the league going into Wollongong. Almost laid an egg. There was a pretty lackluster performance from Perth, and we'll get to the biggest reason John Rillie put behind it in a second. But putting that aside, I mean, the Hawks were impressive, and we've talked about how much better defensively they've instantly got under Justin Tatum. But from a Wildcats perspective, was this just a blip, or did you see some ongoing concerns?
Look, I think it was a bit of a blip. I'm kind of upset at myself because I thought something like this might happen. Yeah. And every fibre of my being was like, no. The Cats are balling right now. Illawarra is still trying to figure themselves out. I was like, I don't know why you're thinking that. So I just went against my grain. And
I think you might have got some good odds on Tab Touch if you did.
Oh, yeah.
If you did back yourself.
I'm sure I would have. But no, look, I do think it's a bit of a blip. And obviously not a full roster. It is tough. But the Hawks are playing a lot better under Tatum. And, we're seeing a lot more bite on defense, like you mentioned, which wasn't hard to incorporate because they had nothing before that, unfortunately. And they're just pushing the ball. They're just using, their strengths, and
also going inside to Sam Froling and getting him involved.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a different looking player now when he's a bit of a focal point. Yes. May have spoken about this with Adelaide and Humphreys, but yeah, look, playing through Froling has been huge for him. And you got a guy like Clark who's just been really solid for him all season, really. Even when they've been struggling, he's kind of been solid for them. And playing a guy like Hickey who came out and gave really good energy, I thought he was really good for them.
And I love listening to Tatum talk because he said that Hickey's been doing the work in practice, earning a chance. And I said, if you earn a chance, I'll give you a chance. And he gave him the chance.
Yeah, and he grabbed it with both hands and took off with it. It was awesome. It was really good to see. And, I think he can be really impactful, especially the way that they want to play defense. I think he's a big key for that. I think he can come in and be a real good spark for them. So, yeah, look, I mean, going back to the Cats, I do think it's a bit of a blip. But they'll certainly go back and look at the tape and see what the heck they did wrong, because there was a fair few things.
Let me play to you what John Rillie thought the problem was, and a little bit of a writer on this. So, as you know, I'm part of all the post-match press conferences, but the Zoom wasn't working for this game in Wollongong, so no one outside of the people in the room were able to ask questions. So John didn't necessarily get many questions, and he decided to ask himself a question. So this is what he had to say.
I'll ask a question. Missing Ty Webster, was that important to you guys? Yes, I think having Ty Webster absent tonight was very key for our team. Thank you.
We've talked before about how highly he rates Ty Webster, and he does push the pace and he does make things different. What do you make of his reaction?
Yeah, look, I think I'm not really sure how to take that one. It's an interesting one. And
what about the fact that he had to ask himself the question?
Yeah, I mean that's brutal. That's brutal in itself. It wasn't a good weekend for the Tech guys. But yeah, look, Ty is obviously very important to the team, right? Because he's kind of, while I don't really think he's a pure point guard, he is for the Cats. He's their point guard. He's their guy that runs the ship. And he's aggressive enough that you have to take notice when he has the ball. Once he's out of there, then you've got guys like Bryce playing point guard, and that's where he isn't successful. You've got him trying to set stuff up, or you've got Doolittle bringing it up or throwing it back to Jesse, letting him bring it up, or stuff like that. And we saw Cole Zunic start the game, and it's big shoes to fill when you haven't really played all season.
Well, can I ask you about that? Because he did start the game, and if you're given the role to be the point guard, back him in. He played 3 minutes at the start, and he didn't come back on the court.
No, and that's. I'm not sure why coaches do that. We see it a fair bit actually. Look, it's frustrating, and obviously tough for Kyle as well, and him being a full roster player is tough.
Well, he's playing for his career right now.
Yeah, he is.
Unfortunately, that's not going to help.
No, it's not. It's not. Yeah, look, I don't know. It's a tough one. So look, I do agree that Ty Webster being out was big for them. Do I think it would have completely changed the game? Probably not. I think that it would have been a different game, absolutely, but. As good as Ty has been for them this year, he does do some silly things at times as well. He's not having his best shooting season so far, and not been great for them. But look, he's that energy guy. And it's someone that I think has really helped turn around their season. He's kind of given him the keys and said, "Here, run the show." And yeah, I think it certainly did have a hindrance on how they played this one.
All right, Cody, I think we've done a good job wrapping all that up. So let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get our awards, and then we'll turn our attention to round 11 in the NBL.
He'll make it for sure. That's why I backed him on Tap Touch.
You got the touch. You got the power. Got the touch? Choose Tap Touch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Imagine what you could be buying instead.
Okay, Cody, back on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle, last segment for this week. Let's go quickly through our award winners. Matt Kenyon at the South East Melbourne Phoenix, very popular. So he was the Galen winner from Simon Mitchell for the best team man in the NBL, and also top votes from Damian Martin in the best defensive player. Simon Mitchell, very impressed with him, and he probably wished he was able to sign him a bit earlier to get him to the Phoenix so he could have coached him, but here's what he had to say. Making the plays that don't hit the stat sheets and some that do. Influence versus Sydney on timely offensive rebounds, steals and points. A glue guy that got the job done in a major win for the Phoenix. What can you add?
Not much. I mean, it's hard to add much to these each week. But look, I think perfect choice, and I think Matt Kenyon's probably been right there a few weeks this season. For Simon to pick, but he is. He's the ultimate team guy, and he does a lot of the dirty work. Unbelievable defensively, and he's one of those guys that will be the first to the floor, and happy to guard the best player on every team.
And getting back to what we talked about before, he does a lot of things that Craig Moller did. Yeah, so he helps to fill that void.
Yeah, just a smaller version, really. Yes. So look, it was he's been awesome, and I really really enjoy watching him play.
Best Defensive Player Award from Damian Martin. So Matt Kenyon, the 3 votes. Will Magnay, the 2. Jalen Galloway, probably especially for his plays against Cairns and late in the game where he got that steal. So happy with those?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's pretty spot on. And again, I'd argue with Damo on these, but no, look, I think Galloway definitely against Cairns was huge. He was huge for him, and just using his athleticism, and he's getting smarter and smarter on the defensive end, and when you've got those athletic talents, it certainly helps. But he was awesome, and obviously Magnay's been great since he's been back, and he's been fun to watch, and he's actually been able to stay out there.
Yes,
and
he has.
He's been a real force for them. I think kind of having that backup, guys can get up and in a bit more, and knowing that Will's was behind them to be able to change a shot or send the shot into the stands. But,
he was only credited with 1 block again, Cody.
Yeah, don't get me started. We don't have much longer left, and we could make another whole show on that. But I think Damo's got all those very right.
Matty Knight's Player of the Year votes as well. So Jordan Crawford, the 5 votes. Mitch Creek, Chris Golding, Tajir McCall, 15 assists he had in that game.
Unbelievable.
In that game, record-setting 15 assists, and then Sam Froling as well. So I feel like he's covered that pretty well.
Yeah, that's all pretty spot on there. I mean, it's one of those things that you think Froling, the way he played, especially against one of the hottest teams in the league, you'd expect him to get more votes, but then you look across the league and some of the other games, you're like, well, it's hard to move him up anywhere,
yes.
And the fact that McCall gets 15 assists and plays the way he did, then he only gets the 2 votes. And look, all those guys are very deserving.
Before we get to our round 11 preview, I want to get your thoughts on the DC Universe uniforms, Cody. I mean, I feel like it's a good idea in theory.
Yeah.
The execution is frustrating because the way the uniforms are designed, by the time the guys tuck in their singlet, you can't see anything on it.
Yeah, not
really. What are your thoughts?
Oh man, I freaking love it. I'm so upset that I'm not on a team that I can get these uniforms. Since I've been out of the league, there's been some unbelievable uniforms and unbelievable rounds come in. And those that know me, I'm a massive Batman fan, and I think the Melbourne ones, and then even the Jack Jumpers Joker ones.
Yes.
Lauren asked me why the Jack Jumpers got 2 separate ones, and my thought to that was because they didn't get their Indigenous one.
It might have been a replacement.
That would probably be my only reason for it. But no, look, I absolutely loved it, and I think it's awesome. And the only issue being placement of the heroes and
especially
where they are.
Especially the teams that don't have a sponsor, and you've got that big gap there. Can't we put the designs in that gap if you don't have a sponsor?
Yeah, and I think you could make them bigger and better and brighter and make them the whole jersey. You know what I mean? Some of them had just like the little character in the corner, and I mean we saw some. The Hawks ones had it across the whole bottom, but look, I feel like you could certainly make it bigger and better. But again,
even just for those games, do we need the team name there? Maybe we could replace the character with the team name, so we can see it a bit more.
Yeah.
The idea is great. I just want to be able to see it better.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. But yeah, no, I loved all the uniforms. I thought they were all awesome. Yes. Yeah, they were really cool.
The Batman and Jokers stood out to me. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Batman and Joker, and as you saw, as we pulled up here, the Batman lights out the front, up against the fence, and even in the room down there, I've got a Batman spotlight up on my roof.
Love it.
All right, that's enough of that, Cody. Let's get to business. Thanks to TabTouch, our round 11 preview. Head to tabtouch.com.au or download the TabTouch app and find our exclusives for this week, Cody. So each week you're making a same-game multi-exclusive from 2 NBL games. So whatever game the Wildcats are involved in, and then we'll pick out another one. This week it'll be the Throwdown. You're also picking out an NBL multi from 3 winners you hope to find, and also an NBA multi as well. It's good fun trying to do this, and does it make it more fun for you trying to watch, just to hope that these come out, because we're trying to find some winners for people.
Yeah, we are, and it's certainly getting me fairly invested in some of the games. I had one a couple of weeks ago where we had JLA for double-double, and I was sitting there screaming at the TV and yelling at it, and then he came off with like 6 minutes to go, and I got annoyed because I was like, oh, he's not going to come back on now because Huck Porty's been so good, and then he came back on and then was like a point short, and I mean, and I don't have anything financially invested in any of this, so. But no, look, it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun, and you are invested in games, and it's great. I really enjoy it, and I appreciate TabTouch for letting us do this and putting multis together for them, and hopefully we're doing you guys some service and winning you a bit of money.
Let's hope so. So go and check it out at TabTouch. Thursday night, standalone game, and it's a Throwdown. Massive game. South East Melbourne Phoenix are now coming off a bit of a high, and it'll be interesting what sort of personnel they have available. I know Tarangi will be back fresh off the birth of his child, but in terms of the new import, I'm not sure. Melbourne United, I expect to be at full strength, and off the back of an emphatic bounce back win against the Brisbane Bullets. What are you expecting?
A heck of a game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's usually a really good game between these two. And the whole rivalry thing, even though it's fairly young rivalry with these two teams, but look, I had a bit of trouble with this one, trying to pick who I thought would win it. Obviously the Phoenix coming off a massive win, and Melbourne coming off like a 40-point win. It is also very, very impressive. So they both have really good rounds, but look, I do just think Melbourne kind of have too much firepower, and I think they're a bit better defensively. So I do think they'll get this one.
Friday night doubleheader. We talk a lot about the travel that the New Zealand Breakers have to go through. They now have to fly up to Cairns through a tropical cyclone. Do they make it? Does this game go ahead?
I don't know. Hopefully, if there's any kind of risk involved, then they just call it. And, interesting to see what happens with the Cairns boys if they get them out of there or, what the deal is. But, yeah, I'm not sure. It's just...
No, so we'll wait and see how that plays out. But let's assume the game goes ahead.
Well,
what do you expect to see?
I think Cairns get it. I think they've been a lot better than I thought they would be. They've really taken it to some of the top teams in the league and getting some wins over them. And yeah, look, they've been very impressive. Very impressive with, on paper, not as talented a roster as everyone else. So look, I do think they get it. I think New Zealand fixed their rebounding woes a little bit, but I think Cairns certainly get that one.
Second up, Perth Wildcats and the Tasmania Jack Jumpers. This will be fascinating. So the Wildcats back home trying to bounce back, but also the Jack Jumpers in really good form. I assume Milton Doyle's back. I'm not sure, but either way, I know Scott Roth won't want to lose twice in Perth in one season.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And I think that this will be another really good game, and a high-scoring Cats team against a Tassie team that is really trying to work on their defense. And obviously with Will Magnay back in the lineup, it does help them. Yeah, it's going to be a heck of a game. I think the Cats will bounce back. Is Ty going to be back for this one?
I think so.
Yeah, I think he will be. So I think they probably right their ship from last week. Tassie's certainly going to take it to them. Because, especially if Doyle's back in, it's a lot of firepower to deal with.
2 more games on Saturday. South East Melbourne Phoenix with the backup from Thursday night's throwdown. But they head to Gippsland, and we've seen some crazy games out there. Yeah. And they are playing host to the Illawarra Hawks, much improved Illawarra Hawks. And as Simon pointed out a couple of weeks ago, maybe they're not the same old Hawks.
Yeah, there you go. I know. It's nice to actually say that right now, isn't
Yes.
it? We were hoping for that at the start of the season. So, yeah, look, obviously a very different Hawks under Tatum, and they're playing with some pace. So I think that'll certainly play into their hands with Phoenix on the back of the double. Yeah, I think that, look, I really think that the Phoenix, if they're really going to be a contender, I think they need to get this one. But I reckon the Hawks are really going to take it to them. I think Phoenix get it in the end, but I reckon it's going to be a really close one.
It's good to see the Hawks are making themselves hard to play against. We didn't see that for a season and a half, unfortunately.
It's going to be interesting to see how Sam goes against Williams.
That's a great matchup, isn't it?
It's going to be interesting because Williams has been a little bit foul prone as well.
Yes.
So
more than a little bit.
Yeah. So and Sam's going to really take it to him if they keep him as their focal point. And so yeah, be an interesting little matchup.
Second up, Melbourne United against the Adelaide 36ers. I never thought I would say this in my life, but Dean Vickerman up against Scott Ninnis in the coaching seat. How does Adelaide go?
Yeah, look, I think they're still going to take a few more games to really get a rhythm going, if they're going to. And Melbourne are just such a well-oiled machine. It's hard to try to find a rhythm against a team like that, unfortunately. So, yeah, look, I do think we see Adelaide slowly improve. But, I mean, it'd be interesting to see the excuses start to stop because, we've seen a few now in the past few weeks, which isn't ideal. And, look, all very valid points, but it's got to get to the point where it's like, all right, figure it out. So, look, I think Melbourne get this one fairly handily. Yeah, it's going to be a good little matchup.
We saw DJ Vasiljevic get fined when he was complaining about officiating in a game where his team was on the right end of it.
Yeah.
It was fascinating why he would even buy into it.
Yeah, and look, it's one of those things that it's proof of how bad it's gotten. Honestly.
Yes. Yeah.
And to have a guy that was on the good end of the stick complaining and being like, well, look, it's ridiculous how big a difference there is. Because teams don't play that differently in the defensive end. Obviously some teams up and in a bit more, and I think there's some teams where they've got guys on there that use their hands a heck of a lot that don't get called, and will get called once maybe every quarter. So look, each player is obviously ref differently, and it's it was certainly a bit of an interesting situation, wasn't it?
No, you're right. I mean, we don't have time to get into it, but Bull Kowal seems to be getting cracked down on a lot now because it's been called out by commentators, and now all of a sudden the referees have picked up on it. I mean, like you said, some guys are getting away with murder out there.
Yeah,
but that's almost another whole show.
That really is.
Cody. Okay, Sunday doubleheader. These two teams love playing against each other, have a great rivalry going. But it's a short turnaround for the Tasmania Jack Jumpers at home to the Sydney Kings.
Yeah, very short turnaround and not ideal, but that's all right. It's how it goes. So, look, obviously Sydney's going to come in fresh and probably hungry after the back end of their last round. So I think the Kings get this one just because of the pace of play. But, Jack Jumpers aren't going to go down without a swing and a few haymakers. So it'll be a lot of fun watching that one.
Last game of the round, Brisbane Bullets, their only appearance of the weekend.
Yep.
Coming off a really poor showing against Melbourne, a surprisingly poor showing against the Cairns Taipans team, who we'll wait and see what happens with them on Friday.
Yeah, and look, I think they turn it around. I think Brizzy turn around here, and it's going to be interesting to see how Cairns are and how they are in the mental space. Honestly, with everything going on. So, hopefully it's all good up there and everything clears up for them, and they can get on with the round, and everyone up there can get out safe and all that good stuff. But yeah, look, I think Brizzy get this one. I think they'll turn it around.
All right, Cody, that's been a lot to cover, a lot of topics to cover, and it's a very eventful time in the NBL right now, so thank you for helping me break it all down. Thank you to Hoop 7 for making it possible. Still time to get your Christmas gifts, so head into Hoop 7 if you're in Perth, or go to hoop7.com.au and head to TabTouch at tabtouch.com.au or the TabTouch app, and we'll try to find you some winners. Check out our exclusives, especially for the Throwdown on Thursday, the Wildcats and the Jack Jumpers on Friday, and the NBA game on Saturday, Cody. I forget which teams you picked. The Suns were definitely involved.
Yes, the Suns and my New York Knicks.
Suns and the Knicks. So Cody's found you some things to watch in that game as well for Saturday. So check all that out. I'll wrap things up there, Cody, and leave you with the final words. Yeah, look, just hopefully everyone up in Cairns stays safe. I think is the big thing for this week, and hopefully everything is fine up there and nothing too hectic happens. So hopefully they're all good.
He'll make it for sure. Now that's why I backed him on TabTouch.
Hey, Luke!
Yes, Gene Simmons?
He's probably the best when it comes to this stuff!
Thanks, Gene.
You've got the touch! You got the touch, you got the power. Got the touch? Choose TabTouch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.